Grab a seat. Again, I want to thank the band Final Greetings. You can find them on Spotify. They are just an incredible band that has a huge heart, and we're so thankful that they joined us. I just have one criticism. I could have used more cowbell, so that's all I'm going to say. But anyways, hey, I hope you are well. I pray that the transformative power of God's gospel is electrifying your heart, that you are awake and you are well because of his transforming power in you. Now, sometimes obstacles get in the way of us experiencing the glorious gospel of Jesus Christ. Many times those obstacles can be people. And I just got to be honest about a person that really got in my way this week. And no, it wasn't Pastor Chad. But I mean, I get flustered. I get angry just thinking about this person. I mean, Monday morning, this person bugged me. Tuesday, this person got in the way. This person, the reason I'm so frustrated, this person is me. Can you relate? I thought, like with age, I'd be like, as I grow older, I'd be like more courageous, like as Chuck Norris gets older, like Chuck Norris doesn't age, he levels up, okay? I don't. No, I feel like, and maybe you can relate, like, you're like, man, I thought like by now, like I'm 41, I thought I'd like arrived in a place of like, I'm strong, like Chuck Norris, tough as nails, like I'm not afraid of anything. Yeah, I mean, just to be real with you, like the state of, some of the news and what's going on, my family's like, Dad, are you okay? What's going on? What are you watching? What's going on with the news? Is everything going to be okay? And I want to be resolved to follow Jesus, the road less traveled. And maybe you can relate. There's time, like our propensity is to be risk averse. Our propensity is to want to avoid suffering, avoid criticism, to serve self rather than serve Christ and others. One battle general said to his army, I have seen the enemy and it is us. The first person we need to change as we go to follow the Great Commission of making disciples of Jesus. Like the first person that needs change is us. In fact, as I preach, I hope you see my heart bleeding because my heart has been cut by the gospel of Jesus Christ. This is the sword of the Spirit, that it has cut me, that I'm not up here preaching something that you just need and I have it figured out. I have not arrived. This thing has cut me, but it also brings healing. And I pray it does the same for you. In our text today, Peter is encouraging the church to arm themselves with an attitude like Christ that's willing to suffer for Christ. Like, think about this. Like, the name of our church is Cross View. And what comes in mind is like Christ on the cross had a view of others. In fact, and I keep saying it, he cared more about our salvation than his own present suffering. And I want to ask you a question. Do you have that same attitude, even those that criticize you, malign you, unfriend you? Do you care more about their salvation than your own present suffering? Amen. A couple questions to stir your affections and get real. What does it mean to have an attitude willing to suffer? And then number two, how does knowing that Jesus will someday judge your critics help you face their judgment of you now? I'll say it again. How does knowing that Jesus will someday judge your slandering critics help you face their judgment of you now? And then number three, what does it mean that love covers a multitude of sins? My wife and I had a few intense moments of fellowship this last week. It's a fancy way of saying fights. We had some fights. And one of the nights I brought Ben and Jerry's ice cream up and I'm like, honey, Ben and Jerry's ice cream covers a multitude of sins, It didn't work, but that's okay. I'll try. I still have Cherry Garcia. I can try that. But anyways, no, love covers a multitude of sins. And let's read the passage here. Find out what the Apostle Peter is getting at as he writes to the church. So then, since Christ suffered physical pain, you must arm yourselves with the same attitude he had and be ready to suffer too. For if you have suffered physically for Christ, you have finished with sin. Look at that. You have finished with sin. You won't spend the rest of your lives chasing your own desires, but you will be anxious to do the will of God. You have had enough in the past of the evil things that godless people enjoy, their immorality and lust. By the way, lust means, it's a definition, is like, I deserve that, Their feasting and drunkenness and wild parties and their terrible worship of idols. Look at verse 4. Of course, your former friends are surprised when you no longer plunge into the flood of wild and destructive things they do, so they slander you. But remember that they will have to face God, who will judge everyone, both the living and the dead. That is why the good news was preached to those who are now dead. So although they were destined to die like all people, they now live forever with God in the Spirit. The end of the world is coming soon, because it's 2020. No, I'm kidding. But look at that. The end of the world is coming soon. Right? Therefore, be earnest and disciplined in your prayers. Most important of all, continue to show deep love for each other. This isn't a quick hi and hello, a deep, abiding love for each other. For love covers a multitude of sins, right? Better than Ben and Jerry's ice cream. Love covers it. Cheerfully share your home with those who need a meal or a place to stay. Even during this pandemic, are we open to reach out to others? Are we inviting? Let's pray. Well, our goal today, because Christ was committed to save us from sin, we can be committed to suffer for him and serve him. Would someone say the word committed out loud, nice and loud? Committed. We live in a world that is not committed. We're flippant. If it works for us, then we'll do it. We have to be committed now more than ever to be the church that burns bright for him. I'll tell you what, like Pastor Chad he's not just an amazing pastor that just is a joy to work with. He is one of my dearest friends. And I walked in this morning and he said, Pastor Josh, like we need to care about our city. Yes, what could happen, with our governor and what he's going to be sharing in a few moments. Do we care about our city? Not just caring about the sick, caring about businesses and caring about people. Are we just, and I loved his heart. He is a pastor that doesn't just have the words to be in the city for the city. His heart bleeds it. Does your heart bleed it? Do you bleed for the city? Do you care about the city that Jesus has placed you in? Do you see yourself as a missionary in this city? You are a missionary. The church has paid for your plane ticket to arrive to this country. You've sold all no, you're right here. We're all in full-time paid ministry. God just routes our paychecks through different sources. You're on a missionary. You're on a mission trip. It's been paid for with Christ's blood. Are you willing to suffer for him? If you're taking notes, I want you to write this down. Think about this. What if we turned suffering from others into prayer for others? We turned it on its head. We just turned it around. What if the suffering, the criticism, the slander, the suffering we face from others, what if it turned into prayer for others? Woo! What if we counted it all joy when we face various trials and tribulations like James talks about? Going, man, this is an opportunity for joy. This is an opportunity to grow. Like I said, the last couple weeks I've been saying this. Again, it's not very enticing to crawl out of bed to crawl onto the cross. Many of us, like the first decision we want to make of the day is, I will hit the snooze button. And for the second most important decision of the day, I will hit the snooze button again. We need to crawl onto the cross. Galatians 2:20, I've been crucified with Christ. Many of us want to identify with Christ in glory, but we don't want to identify with him in suffering. It's easier to stay asleep. It's easier to hit the snooze button, okay? Oh, that preaching thing, that's what we watched Pastor Josh do, right? And Chad and the team. Well, that worship team did a great job worshiping. Good job. You are worshipers. You are ministers. We have to believe that, and we have to be willing to suffer. I love this. It's out of 2 Corinthians. Paul writes this to the church of Corinth. He says this, "For our present troubles are small and won't last very long." You hear that like, hey, your suffering's not going to last very long. Some of you are like, oh, hey, I thought the lockdowns were only going to be for a little bit. What's going on? And oh my goodness. And then if, 4 weeks has turned into 4 months, and it feels like 4 years, and so on and so forth. When we are in eternity and we look back, our suffering on this earth will feel like 4 seconds. When we're 4 trillion years into eternity, we'll look back and go, man, that was like nothing. Why? Look at this. Yet they produce for us a glory that vastly outweighs them and will last forever. Verse 18, so we don't look at the troubles we can see now, rather we fix our gaze. Not just look at the cross. Hey, just look at it real quick. Some of us, we just kind of look at Jesus, a quick little glance. No, this says fix our eyes. We need the Holy Spirit to quicken our heart. It can't just be like, well, you know what? I'm a good person. I'll take a glance at Jesus. On my own, I am going to set this down. On my own, I'm going to wander on my own. That's why I was bought. I was purchased. His blood, I'm a blood-bought person. You're a blood-bought people. Our affections should change. Friends, do you believe that? Are we going to glance at Jesus or fix a gaze on Jesus? And the things that cannot be seen, for the things we see now will soon be gone, but the things we cannot see will last forever. And then the Bible gets more descriptive in Colossians. Look at the resume of Jesus. Look at it. He says, he is the image of the invisible God. Jesus is the image. He's the visible image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation, fully man and fully God. This is who we need to gaze our eyes at. Last night, I'm going to be honest, bedtime was a little rough. I tried bribery, I tried threatening, I tried everything. And so when all else fails, like nothing was working, I was just like, what's going on? Can you try again? What about this? What about that, Daddy? And you guys maybe hear it, right? You hear everything. My secret weapon in parenting is Ephesians chapter 1. It works every time because they fall asleep. No, that's not what happens. But it says, for this reason, because I've heard of your faith in the Lord Jesus and your love toward all the saints. And I emphasize right there, love toward your dad, love to your brothers and sisters, so go to sleep. No, that's not what I said. But it says, having the eyes of your hearts enlightened. That means we don't look with just well, Daddy, can you turn on the nightlight? Well, Daddy, this mess, brother did that. I don't want to clean it up or whatever. It's having the eyes of our hearts to look past some of the present things that are annoying us or bothering us and looking at the visible image of the invisible God, Jesus Christ. Here's the deal. We are willing to suffer for what we love. I love my family. And I love the church family. I'm a pretty nice guy. If you're new to the church and you're able to sneak past me and I see you maybe out the window, I'm that guy that will chase you down and welcome you, right? Love on you. I'm excited. But you break into my house to oppose my family, I'm going to chase you down and go Chuck Norris style. It's not going to be, well, at least I will try, right? I'm willing to suffer for my family. I think every man and woman in this home or in this house would believe that. In God's house, you would do that for your house, right? We can brag about that, oh yeah, I would take a bullet. I would stand up. Are we willing to suffer for the not yet family that doesn't yet know Jesus, even those that would criticize you and slander you and attack you? Do you have that same love and care for them like you would your own family? Oh, you're breaking into my home. What about the enemy that has broken into the not yet family, that is a slave to sin, that doesn't know him? Do we have a protective heart that wants to go after them? Or are we only caring about our present suffering in the attack? Are we me-centered or Jesus-centered? This is a gnarly verse. It's 1 Peter 4 and verse 1. For if you have suffered physically for Christ, you have finished with sin. Sin is such a religious word, like you hear that and you're like, oh, here he goes again, sin, sinner, sin, sin, sin. But we need to know what's behind sin. It is a misalignment from the Son of God. It draws us away. We need our heart's affections changed. We need to have the Lord give us eyes to see how grotesque the lusts of the flesh are. It's almost, Proverbs describes it this way, as a dog returns to its vomit. Lunch is coming. So a man returns to his folly, to his sin. You guys ever seen a dog do that? That's pretty weird, right? Blip. And then they're like sniffing over here and they're like, oh, look over here. Lickety lick. Yeah. Banana split. No, it's not good. It's gross. And yet the Bible's very descriptive. This is us when we sin. But we're like, no, it's not gross. It's fine. We need the eyes of our hearts enlightened to not just see the glory of Jesus, that he's so much better, but to be like, ugh, that's gross. To be finished with sin. Again, I said it earlier, we protect, like we're willing to suffer for what we love. What's scary is what happens, what about when we still love sin more than him, and we're willing to suffer for sin? Are you tracking with me? You ever gotten like really protective? You get called out on something? Okay, married dudes in the house, like your wife calls you on something and you're just like, oh no, you did not. Honey, what are you saying? And you got this idol over here and you're willing to suffer for it. Like what could have been a 5-minute, conflict turned into a 5-hour because you are suffering because you won't let go of the idol. This might grab your attention. Look at this. Many will suffer spiritually just to enjoy sin physically. Come on, chew on that for a second. Do you see it? Many will still suffer spiritual. They're willing to suffer spiritual death. They're willing to suffer hell just to enjoy sin for a season. Is that cutting your heart yet? Many will suffer spiritually just to enjoy sin a little bit more physically. The good news is if you are committed to suffer for Christ, you should be committed to resist sin. That same resilience that's in you to stand up for Jesus should be like, oh, I need to resist sin. Yeah. We're not talking about sinless perfection, but a serious progression. In fact, think of it this way. Well, let me read this before I get to that. Verse 3, you have had enough in the past of the evil things that godless people enjoy, their immorality and lust, their feasting and drunkenness and wild parties, and their terrible worship of idols. Now watch this. I'm going to talk about money for a second. Many of us are willing to spend for sin. For the idol, and we'll spend away. But how dare the pastor talk about spending your time, talent, and treasure for Jesus? Oh, did you hear that, honey? He talked about, he read that Bible verse in the Old Testament about giving a tithe, 10% of our income. How could he? Oh, the audacity. When we just spend frivolously for idolatry. Or even scrolling. Oh man, we're just scrolling, trolling, whatever it is on social media for hours and hours. And for the Bible, I'll give the Bible 5 minutes. If we aren't serious about spiritual change and progress, do we actually know Jesus? Many are sadly defeated in battle against sin because they've refused to sacrifice anything in the battle, wanting victory only if it comes easy. It's like that battle general saying it. Hey, army, I have found the enemy and it is us. The person that is messing up your marriage is you. And we are the problem. The problem in your family, the problem in your neighborhood, the problem in your work is we need Jesus desperately. We're all sinners. We need Jesus to transform us. We need to take up our cross daily and be committed to it. 1 Peter 4:4, of course, your former friends are surprised when you no longer plunge into the flood of wild and destructive things they do, so they slander you. Cancel culture awaits those that won't join them in their quest. You even have seen it. Some of the Christian actors that will go, you know what, I'm not gonna join that. I'm not gonna do that. And they will get slandered just for being silent, right? Like we live in a culture that is ready to cancel you if you don't join in their pandering, right? And we have to be careful to not go back to pandering and pretending along with them. We have to be resolved to burn bright for him. Again, I have to say it, we are willing to suffer for what we love. When you actually experience Christ's incredible, irresistible, indescribable love, you can't help but be willing to suffer for him. And you'll have new eyes instead of just saying, oh man, those people are causing me to suffer. You're like, instead of focusing on suffering, you're focusing now on praying for them. Peter demonstrates this importance of not just being willing to suffer, but serve. And that's our second point, being willing to serve. We live in a season now more than ever that people care which side you are on politically. People care about what do you believe? Religiously, politically, pandemically. I know pandemically is not a word, but like what's your response to COVID-19? What's your response? The point is not what side you're on. The point Peter is making in our text is not to focus on who agrees with you, but to love all people, to be willing to serve Christ and to serve even those who hate you, even those who would criticize you. The next time, again, you find someone on the other side of your belief system, especially in your view of Christ, that you would see this and to go, man, Lord, help me to care about them. Help me to be willing to pray for them. Even though they hate me right now, they have to face you someday. And yeah, I'm facing criticism. I'm facing judgment right now, but they someday on judgment day will have to face you. Help my heart to bleed for them and to care about their salvation, not care about my own present suffering. 1 Peter 4:5, but remember that they will have to face God, who stands ready to judge everyone, both the living and the dead. The Pasma family loves the band Switchfoot. John Foreman, personally have met him, and he just has an incredible heart. And he says this in his song, Terminal. So there's a song called Terminal. Every time I listen to it, makes me shed some tears. But he says it this way in his song, don't yell at the dead. Show a little respect. We're terminal. He's talking about the spiritual zombies, the walking dead that are walking around. Their eyes are open, they're talking to you, they're slandering you, but they're really still dead. Don't yell at the dead. Have a little respect. We're all terminal. Wrecks me every time I hear it. And I believe we see Peter has this heart. They're gonna be judged. Don't yell at them, don't hate them, pray for them. Have a deep love for each other. 1 Peter 4:7, therefore be earnest and disciplined. That word earnest means authentic, honest. In fact, when we're running on the treadmill, are we just listening to our favorite tune or our favorite podcast, or are we praying for people by name? Are we earnest and disciplined in our prayer time? Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers was disciplined every day. He would pray for people by name. He had a list of people that he prayed for. Are we disciplined? Are we earnest to pray for our neighbors, to pray for the not yet family? Instead of just going, oh, they're lost, those sinners. Oh, they're being mean to me. Oh, just wait. Their time is coming. Like, we should not be like that. Masochistic Christians, like, it doesn't work. Like, we should be like, some judgment day is coming. The end of the world is near. They don't know Jesus yet. My heart needs to bleed for them. I need to pray for them. I need to open my house to them. Instead, oh, they don't know Jesus yet. Honey, don't invite them over. 1 John 4:19, we love because he first loved us. In fact, I want to share an absolutely incredible story out of the Old Testament. It breaks my heart and fills my heart every time I hear it. It's about Naaman. Naaman was an army general, basically for Syria. The Bible calls it Aram, which is now present-day Syria. So this is a general on the other side, on the wrong side. He's not on God's side. In fact, he was one of the captors he participated in human trafficking. He took a little Jewish girl from her home. I mean, that should make your blood boil. You ever seen the movie Taken, Liam Neeson? I got a certain set of skills. You know, like, where's Liam Neeson, right? And so she's a victim, this little Jewish girl. We don't know her age. We just know her captor was Naaman, and Naaman has leprosy. And the little girl doesn't go, ha, 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 ha. Oh, now I lay me down to sleep. I pray that Naaman will die. You're like, he had it coming. She doesn't do that. Instead, she tells Naaman where he can find healing. Everyone's focused on the healing that happens to Naaman. I'll tell you the end of the story. His leprosy goes away. I think the greatest miracle is that God put it in this little girl's heart who is suffering, who would love to be home with her family in Israel, and instead has a heart for Naaman. Like that gets me every time. Like, think about that. I'll read part of the story. So Naaman went, so he listens to the girl. I mean, I think that's pretty cool. He's like, really? I'm going. I want to meet this prophet in Israel. I'm willing to do that, right? So Naaman went with his horses and chariots and waited at the door of Elisha's house. But Elisha sent a messenger out to him with this message: go and wash yourself 7 times with hand sanitizer. No, it doesn't say that. Go and wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan River, then your skin will be restored and you will be healed of leprosy. So historically, the Jordan River was filthy. And so this proud general is like, well, let's see what he says. But Naaman became angry and stalked away. I thought he would certainly come out to meet me, he said. I expected him to wave his hand over the leprosy and call on the name of the Lord as God and heal me. See, he wanted a genie. He wanted one of his wishes granted. Where, rub the lamp. I want a wish. Aren't the rivers of Damascus, the Abana and the Parthia better than any of the rivers of Israel? Why shouldn't I wash in them and be healed? So Naaman turned and went away in a rage. Have any of you left church in a rage? Well, I thought if I started going to church, I've been single forever. I thought I'd get a girl. Or man, I thought I'd get that promotion. I thought I'd get this. And you've left church in a rage? He went away in a rage. But his officers tried to reason with him and said, sir, if the prophet had told you to do something very difficult, wouldn't you have done it? So you should certainly obey him when he says simply go and wash and be cured. So Naaman went down to the Jordan River and dipped himself 7 times as the man of God had instructed him, and his skin became as healthy as the skin of a young child, and he was healed. And the thing that is pricking my heart right now is not that his leprosy went away. Like many of us, we're so focused. In fact, the prosperity gospel preaches, well, man, if you just do enough, if you burn the incense just enough, if you have enough faith, then you'll be healed. The greatest sickness is not COVID-19. The greatest sickness is not leprosy. It is a sin sickness that is in our heart. We need God to melt our heart of stone and to put his spirit in us. And I will tell you what, there is nothing that takes away fear better than his spirit being alive in you. It can't be like, well, the worship was dialed in just right. They had enough cowbell, or they had, I love and oh man, the preaching had just enough humor, and like it was the right time, or whatever. And he said it's like, it is literally, I'm just a doorman that opens the door. I get up here and I'm like, hey, meet Jesus. I want to get out of the way for you to meet Jesus. That's what's so important, friends. And again, we don't let pride almost stopped Naaman from having healing. If Naaman needed healing from leprosy, how much more do we need healing in our hearts? Some of us are suffering from sin, and we're willing to suffer even more to protect that idol. Jesus on the cross cared more about our salvation than his own suffering. Do you have the same heart? Are you willing to open your home? Are you willing to open your heart to others? Are you willing to be open to listen to the stories of your neighbors and the stories of those around you? If you're a kid in a sports team, or even on Zoom, some of you having to do Zoom school, oh, bless your hearts. Like, are you just complaining, or are you worshiping and caring about your teachers and praying for your teachers, praying for other students, praying? Like, where's your heart at? Is it like that little girl that actually was praying for Naaman and told literally her captor, the person that was causing her suffering, where she could find healing? Some of you are like, oh man, our governor, he's got it. I think he's actually started just now. Don't look. Some of you are like, oh, it started. Let's look at the press conference. Are you praying for him? Or do you just have, where's your emotions at? Where's your heart at? This is so important, friends. I was thinking about this. If someday when I retire from preaching on this stage, again, we never retire from being ministers of the gospel. I hope and pray that if you were to ask one of my children or my wife, hey, tell me about Crossview, that they wouldn't say, oh yeah, that was a thing my dad did, or a thing my husband did. Yeah, he wasn't home very much. Yeah, he loved the church family over our family. I hope and pray they say, no, it was something we got to do together. It was a family endeavor where we got to serve others for God's kingdom and see the not yet family become the family of God. Let's pray. We'll close with this benediction. This is out of Romans 15 and verse 13. It says, now may the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing, so that by the power of the Holy Spirit, you may abound in hope. And all God's people said, amen. Have a great week.